Who's in the office?
Who's in the office? We have, well, from the committee.
Yes.
Just do roll call. Klari, start.
Okay, Klari.
Daniel.
Daniel.
Richard. That's all right.
Saralee.
Saralee, new member,
member.
not a committee member.
Paige.
Miriam, new committee member.
And we have, 2 cats. Can you shout?
People who live in the community.
Yes, you want to shout your names, please?
Olive Floyd.
Martha Dwyer.
There you go.
But we
That's it.
still have more.
Adam
Oh, and Adam, right.
and
Howard.
Howard.
And Seema.
Sorry.
It's okay. Did we freeze?
Nope, there's a little delay, but it's going.
Okay, great.
It sometimes that could just be the internet and it'll kick in normally. They were looking for me over here. I just got a quick check in on what they need and then I'll come back here again, but looks like you guys are self-running now for a few. I'll be back.
It looks questionable though for a quorum, Richard, unless some of them have
Well-
waivers. But we may not do a vote,
We may not be able to vote if we don't.
or may not want to vote. So
Well, we have another, our next land use is on June 6th
What?
or something. Our next land use is June 6th, is it?
it's after the full board.
No, that's not,
It's after the full board, but before the second steering.
it's not the sixth, wouldn't be the sixth.
Wait, I didn't go quite yet. Yes, I'd sent an email to both Richard and Tibita and both of you said you preferred the 6th. You both emailed me that.
People who participate on the board remotely can't count toward a quorum.
That's right, unless they have a certain waiver based on.
Well, I gave Shelley a waiver.
You should amend your bylaws. I can help you with that.
Well, we have enough to discuss tonight. So
No,
keep that in the law, and we'll be back with you.
Unfortunately, it's not a question of the bylaws, it's a question of the state law.
It's state law.
Oh, well,
There are boards that.
Maybe you know how to amend legislation.
Or you could just not call.
I don't know how to get it passed.
Okay.
There is a movement to amend it.
There is.
You could always have a quorum at a brief meeting prior to the full board meeting on the 4th and have a vote. You could meet at 6 and have a quick vote.
Yeah, so we could schedule that if you can't vote tonight, but it would be wonderful if you could have the conversation and come to consensus around what you would like, even if you can't vote.
Now my phone is out of charge.
And I know Polly will be there shortly. She texted me she's on the 1 train. She'll be there momentarily.
Android. Android.
Oh, and Melissa's here. She's just on the other pathway I'm promoting her.
You do? All right, let's, maybe we should, get started.
Do you just want to use this?
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. All right. So what we're gonna try to do tonight is to go into each of the agenda items, or each of the proposals by category that I outlined in the draft that I sent around on right after our last committee meeting, and try to come up with a consensus. Get information from the subcommittees who worked on specific issues, and see if we can come up with a resolution, even if we can't vote tonight. Make progress.
Some people didn't receive it. Did we have printouts of it?
I sent. I
know, but
we're not
we're
on-
not on the
I
committee.
never.
Oh.
No. I'm telling you now, I have all these others, letter to the community board. So, I don't know.
I'll try to count it.
If you put a copy in the next room,
There is nobody in the next room.
I know. I'm offering to go in and figure that out.
Maybe we could put it on the screen and
It
give
is,
like a
that's what we're doing.
30-second summary of the.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
All right, so let me know how fast or how slow to scroll.
Do you guys need, sorry, I was just in the other room doing something. Do you guys need, do you guys got it or do you guys need help with something?
Actually, Max, for the Zoom people, if it's possible for you to maybe share screen with the for the resolution draft? Because we're looking at it on the
Can
TV.
you,
Oh, I see. Let me ask this, Seema, does someone have a laptop in there out of curiosity? If not, it's no problem, but does someone else have a laptop besides the conference room table one?
It's on
From
Seema's
my
laptop,
iPad.
so.
Oh, you're on your iPad?
Yeah, so it's on this TV screen here, but it's not on Zoom. I could email it to everybody on Zoom if that's easier.
I was gonna say, if you could log into the Zoom on, there's two options. If you could log into the Zoom, then mute yourself. I can assign you co-host and then you can share screen and then it'll show up on Zoom for everyone on Zoom. Or if you want to email it to someone that's already, like Melissa, I think just raised her hand, I think.
Can I do that, Melissa?
I'm happy to share it if you want to just bump it up for me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in and out of the room next door. Here, I'm making you co-host.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
This is the old resolution.
I just
It's from-
emailed Richard's draft to the 3 non-members who are new.
Thank you.
I saw on the screen, if that's helpful.
Okay,
This is the economic opportunity one.
no, is it?
Yeah.
Beverly, can you email it to me and Barbara,
Seema.
because we're
The wrong
not.
one,
getting-
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
wrong one.
sorry. Actually, Beverly, would you
I
mind emailing?
got it.
You did.
Seema, what?
We don't have it. Yeah.
Do you mind emailing it to me?
Can you
Sure,
just
I-
send it, email to the committee, so we all have it handy? Thanks.
Just for, context, I didn't reach any conclusions in the draft. All I did was outline what is being proposed, and we have to fill in whether we agree or disagree and why.
Oh, sorry.
Richard Walsh is finding that.
Yeah.
What I found very.
If it would be possible to see Richard, that would also be really helpful to those of us remote here.
I'm gonna
Seema, I just emailed it to you, Seema.
Yeah,
I think I sent it, the thing,
yeah.
it's from
City Best Housing Opportunity,
May 16th.
yes.
Where's the camera?
I didn't get anything.
Okay.
Could somebody please give me
Okay, there we go.
access?
It's gonna be up here. It's up here.
No, but I'd like a copy to take away.
Okay, we don't have a printer.
You know what, babe? I'm gonna send it around again to everybody.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you. Yeah, because it's to
Yeah, it is.
Compared to
It's,
previous draft
so
resolution.
plan.
And can you include Barbara Adler and Roberta Semer on that? Because we're not.
I'll spell it out right.
Thank you,
Well, I'll-
Roberta.
To Barbara and who else?
Roberta.
Roberta,
And
yeah,
me.
And me.
okay.
Blanket the board just
Right.
and the new members. Okay.
You could be getting it any minute.
I
think-
already sent it to the new members.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so the first part, before we get to the specific issues, it's just a summary of what the city claims is the state of housing in the city, with a bunch of bullet points.
just try to.
Just scroll
On the
up or
screen.
down.
I'm trying to scroll, but I can't.
One finger or two.
Oh, do it on the screen.
Yeah.
I think-
Oh, you can do that one too.
Okay.
But the screen is here.
All right, so, why don't we start with the part of the bullet points that describe the issue of the city's housing, see whether this is accurate and or adequate, and whether people have other things to add or subtract.
Richard,
Yeah.
I don't know whether it is accurate as phrasing or paraphrasing what City Planning Commission has said. But the tone of what you've written is that we accept their premises, and I
So
don't
we
know
should-
that we do. I think we
okay.
should
We
phrase
can,
it a
we
little
should
bit.
say that city plan. Okay,
As opposed to.
I think that's, let me just get my pen.
I mean, these are all from the Census Bureau.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
perfectly, I don't think we need to express hesitancy about
No.
federal statistics.
No, we'll just source it. We'll just say it comes from city planning and, you know, by not contradicting it, we're sort of accepting it. For
The premise of their proposal
Yeah.
is their.
Can I ask, just to get everybody, the resolution to everybody, do you mind just putting down your email address? Sure. Thank you.
I'll be able to open the window.
Yes.
Richard?
Yeah.
How,
Thank you.
current are the statistics that are being,
There is a current version that got, you know,
So we can rely on them because they branch between, according to this one, I'm just reading this for the first time, between 2011 and 2020,
Yeah.
nothing in the last 4 years.
that's,
That's the
there's
December
no,
census.
there's no sense.
I know, but it should tell somebody that these are dated. Because there are a lot of people out there who are very angry about not getting things on time. And if we are suffering from the same distribution dates, we need to be in step. Because I've heard a lot about this, that's driving a lot of people crazy in the architecture.
If you just say giving it for the 2027.
Exactly, something easy like that. 'Cause otherwise, we just get eyes thrown in our face.
Okay,
but the important thing is to know what the density is in the city.
Exactly.
I ask
You're
a
just
question?
saying
Are we taking
how
public
much it
comment? at
increased,
this
but you're
point?
not saying how
Yeah,
much.
let's- I'll tell you what, let's, if we can, this is a working session, but we will take public comments at the end.
Right.
So then let's,
Let's,
And-
and,
That wasn't a comment public, but something for him to write.
Do you want to- oh, well,
all right, try to save it, if you have a pad or something, that have questions, just try to save it, so otherwise we're not gonna get it. Okay, any other comments on the preamble? Yeah.
It's true, those numbers, but since the pandemic started, I've been reading that hundreds of thousands of people have left New York.
And hundreds of thousands of going in. Okay.
So I'm not sure what that hell is about.
Yeah.
Right. It's the most even,
One way to do it is to say that these figures all date from pre-pandemic
Yep.
time. Right. And don't account for whatever increases and decreases made.
okay,
I just want to say a general thing. I don't think the city is looking to weigh in on these
No, they're not.
statistics. I think they're looking for us, our opinions on.
yeah, we're not weighing in on
Right.
it. I don't wanna say.
I would just say
anything.
we've noted these,
Yes,
we've
fact.
given these
Yes,
statistics
fact.
and here are our opinions,
Exactly,
not to independently verify the statistics.
of course. Can we go on to the first topic? To allow more floor area for affordable and supportive housing.
Great idea.
Any comments or
No.
Comments characterize what.
either the language or the substance?
I think it's, we know it's 20%, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so we can just leave the blank, otherwise I'm happy with. Take it.
You're saying fill in that.
Yeah, I think we know.
right, okay.
Richard, can I ask, have we seen other community boards resolutions on this?
No, we haven't seen other community board resolutions, but George James hired by at least four, maybe other. Beverly, do you know, who George, wrote for?
Yeah, I know. He wrote for 2, 4, 5, and whatever the east side is. 8.
I thought it was 2 and 3 also.
Anyway, a lot of them.
And, I had a long talk with George, Beverly had a long talk with George. And
Why
he-
hasn't he been brought into community board?
You told the comments. We're not gonna get anywhere. I'm sorry, but this is something we have to do.
I'd like to save my comments for the whole, at least at some point later. I don't want to just see this go by as, oh, yes, fine.
All right,
But
that's fine.
I don't want to jump it right
No,
now.
no, no, you're not waiving anything by allowing us to continue.
Good.
Richard, would it be okay if I report on what our NYCHA
Yes.
committee
You want to take that out? of
came up
turn
with?
because you have a time issue?
I can't hear.
Do you have a time issue?
I do, I will, yeah, very shortly,
You want to take that out of turn then?
if it's okay.
It's fine with me. Anybody object? Okay, go
Okay.
ahead, Miss Shelley.
So the overall thing is that the city of Yes, the housing opportunity will allow NYCHA campuses and other large campuses, when we have them in our district, to add contextual infill development across the city, not just on NYCHA campuses. There are many residential campuses with underused space that could be used and turned into housing. The rules today prevent campuses from using the development rights that they already have. For example, if existing buildings are too tall or too far back from the street, zoning prohibits new developments of the property. So what we asked, and we got a partial answer from, we asked which NYCHA campuses in Community District 7 can build new additional housing based on the plan. Although we didn't get a specific answer, there are many that the campus size has to be 1.5 acres or larger. How high can the buildings be, and what FAR increases are possible? And they vary, but this 20% seems to be, we're going to get more specific answers, but that's what we know. The problem we had with Douglas houses is that it has buildings that are 5, 9, 12, 17, 18, and 20 stories. And how does that work in terms of a large campus like that with 3,000 plus people? Now, one thing we had discussed before was the pilot project that took place in 3 other boroughs, where affordable supportive senior housing was built as infill on NYCHA for seniors, with giving priority to seniors who live in that development. And the 3 pilots were very successful, and this would allow that possibility. Can there be, we asked other questions, can there be building on top of 2 parking garages in Wise Towers? Is that possible? You know, how does that fit in here? Is there an impediment to building over a parking lot? You know, not on a parking lot, but over a parking lot. Can there be building on top of 3- and 4-story NYCHA brownstones? And overall, since the City of Yes housing opportunity will allow for NYCHA campuses and other to add contextual infill development, specifically what sites would that fit into? We haven't been able to get the specific answers yet, but I think that there was a feeling that for the right purpose, it would be good to, this land is available and could be beneficial. But how do we determine what it's going to be used for? Okay. And the reaction of the community. But I think that given the model, the senior housing model that's been tried, and I've spoken to 2 NYCHA tenant leaders who think it's a great idea, okay, locally. But I think that's something we could support, but it's hard to, so that's about what I think. I think people were interested in using the spaces, but what's available, when can it be used, how much additional square footage would there be, what happens over sets of brownstones. These are specific issues we need answers to, and that we should be specific about, because if I lived in NYCHA development and all of a sudden I found that we generally supported the whole thing and whatever comes from it, it's nice, but it's if it's going to negatively impact our living, I don't know if we can blanket support the changes that would affect NYCHA campuses. By the way, it's not just NYCHA campuses. It could be Park West Village. Okay. And
Shelley,
yeah,
is it fair to say that there's something maybe would favor would favor resolution in principle? We believe that unused land at FAR campuses should be developed, but we've been unable to get enough information from city planning to provide for a blanket approval without knowing what any particular infill is going to look like.
yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah. There's good potential there. The other thing is, you know, which is a general question, what input will the community have down the line? Most of this will be as of right, and it makes people very nervous.
Thank you.
You know, what I was going to say is just to add to what you had said, we have reservations, but we don't really have enough information to really want to any type of restructure back to campus. Their location. So we need to have. Look, I read it, you say it now.
I don't get you, but you can't say it now.
Right. Well, when we're talking about
an opportunity.
when I was here at the meeting before, it is an opportunity.
Yes, we did. Every time you ever asked to talk, you talk.
No, that's not true.
In the 50 years I've known you.
Well, not the last meeting, when I had to have here, Kelly,
Richard, may I add a comment?
Shelley, go out to not having enough information, that's what I'm discussing with us, okay? Regarding the night campuses, we did speak to two leaders, so we just want to make sure before we say the resolution that we support it, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, at this time, we just need more information before we make them.
Shelley, would you support the recommendation?
I can't hear.
We have to get through this tonight. We have a deadline of 7 o'clock. We will have a chance to talk. And say whatever you want. Right? Shelley,
Was that Polly? Polly was a part of the subcommittee.
Would you recommend making it subject to a special permit?
Richard, we also understood that in order to do anything at NYCHA is not just in the power of city planning. NYCHA has its own federal, state, and local rules and regulations regarding tenant input and other matters. So I don't think that we need fear that this is going to create massive change without a great deal of community input.
Can I make a suggestion along those lines, which is something like, we're supportive of initiatives to create more affordable housing in Community District 7. We'd like to ensure that there is robust community input prior to any development, or say that that is a priority of the community board, that resident input is considered before development, just like hedge it that way.
Great. Well, if you can write that down and email it to me,
but there is community input that I want to give you right now. I took a lawsuit, I responded after that.
Couple of things. I've got a little too granular, so my apologies. But it also says that, you know, it's written, so it says it has to be under a single ownership, which would exclude Park West Village. Okay. The thing that I have a problem with on the campus thing is that they change the distance between buildings. And that's the big problem.
About 40 feet.
The other thing about it though is, and this is going from, is that the part that quality housing rather than the height factor is a very important change, and it makes things a lot better for night shift campuses, because under height factor go forever to the moon, and when you put it in quality housing, you've got height limits on it. So that's a real positive. That's what in here, and it's different than what is in effect today. So certainly that way, the distance between buildings thing has to be looked at very carefully.
Support the concept of eliminating the height factor.
Right, and then going
Changing it that way, yeah.
because right now you do exceedingly high buildings, which doesn't really work.
Okay.
I've
been waiting.
Okay,
I-
yeah, very patient.
I'm very disturbed by this conversation. We do not have any facts to support what we are toying with in terms of cherry picking projects that, yeah, sure, everybody here knows at least the history of at least 2 or 3 buildings, but we don't have the their master plans, because so many of the lower income properties are now going through renovation. And we will just blow them out of the water and we lose everything. So my concern here is, it's lovely to talk about. I think it's a great game changer to plan for this, and announce it for the community. But we have no facts and figures. We have no idea how much this might cost. We don't know the displacement of people who are trying to get into our city here in this borough, in this district, and it's wishful thinking. We are just paddling upstream and getting nowhere. So I would suggest that, because George James is our friendly person and he knows everybody, is to put an outline together to find out what we really need to make this happen, because it's just going to be another study where it has nowhere to go. We don't even know what other projects are being proposed, because I know, living on the west side on West 88th Street, there's a whole piece of new architecture coming to some of the housing projects. So I'm nervous about just telling people what we want without making a plan or a checklist so that we can come out unscathed. That's all.
Yeah, I had some report page, which is just, I saw the DCP response, and it made me it sort of perked my ears up about what the definition of campus is, or have we thought sort of about the law, I would think on campus in terms of, are there areas we're not thinking of campuses, but all of a sudden we could have a giant building. That said, I'm generally supportive of this. I think we need as much help as possible.
Oh, I think we might be overstaying our inputs. There are an incredible number of rules, as you pointed out, federal, state, city, NYCHA with regard to this. I think the only input we have is, are we in favor of looking at these projects that were built in the 1950s and been left to languish since, and to see if we can find a possibility of doing more affordable housing or not. I think, and that's what our role is. And I'm totally in favor of that.
All right. Second, our motion. I just want to say that I'm aware that NYCHA commissioned a study at the very end of the Bloomberg administration on what high factor buildings look like on NYCHA campuses. And I'm sure that NYCHA have brought it to us, because it's actually kind of horrific if you've seen it. So that was for the most part as of right options. So I would really suggest we find a way to get rid of those options, because A, it's pretty horrific, and 2, they're economically not buildable except for pure market rate housing. So nobody can do a 35-story, 40-story building in the middle of a campus unless they really got a different market and affordable for workforce housing.
And if I make your checklist more real, we need to also find out which one of all the buildings are already really setting their, what do you call it, their 10-year maintenance, you know, when they go, yeah, and because that's gonna be a huge flood of potential housing.
Well, I just want to say tonight as we speak, there is a meeting about the night campuses because a lot of them are going through Section 8 conversion tax program right now as we speak. Okay. Okay. So that's an issue that, you know, has to be addressed tonight as well.
We have a very tight deadline on a very specific project, and a very specific piece of land use planning. So I think what we really need, I agree, I thought Howard's language, which I did not.
I don't know if I
Lots of people can't repeat.
But I think we're getting to the second sentence is, however, without further details and responses to many questions that apply overall, for instance, if you build over a parking lot, and apply perhaps differently to different campuses which haven't been identified, we can't say anything more one way or the other.
Yeah, we prove the principle of the concept of adding housing on campuses. We do not have enough information. We're unable to get enough information to be more specific. But I do think that if this is proved, that there be very stringent rules regarding the community. That sum it up.
Yeah. I think it's a general policy. Usually when city planning proposes change, or at least illustrative drawings on what that change is. Now I realize this change is so vast that they couldn't do that in 6 months or 9 months or whatever. But to my understanding, I've talked to other people who are actively building housing and designing housing. They haven't done that at all at this point. I may not be correct about that statement, but the people that I've spoken to have not been engaged or aware of other people who have been.
Do you know that the biggest hurdle for this realignment of things is the use of private car garages? Because they're open on the ends, they can skirt any what do you call it, fire protection things, because they can push all the cars out and you've got three means of escape. It's really kind of scary. We're involved in a preservation project right now where we're trying to keep everybody happy and no one's happy. Because nobody wants to lose their parking spot. It's so dumb. But anyway, there are a lot of issues to look at, and I'd suggest that we start by educating ourselves with a fire department person who's the best parker. Find out, because I don't want to go in it and mess it up. You know, we're great at that, and then we figure it out later.
That's why I think we should provide some general guidance. Like, yeah, we can experts look at it and go
several categories. The next guy, going back to the outline, proposals for small and shared apartments. It's a no-brainer, but
yeah, I agree. And I thought at the meeting 2 weeks ago, we had two people who talked about how that was super vital to them being able to get their start in New York. So I think this is fantastic.
It's a lot of support. Well,
sure, but
so
I think our role here is just to be like, let's get the zoning roadblock out of the way and then on to the next.
What I'm thinking, and I think that we're talking a lot of what I would say is, I think often, at least personally, I agree with everything that I support the city of, yes, 100%. I think the question is, we're picking small details that are potentially issues, and I expect that we should list them out. But a lot of the changes are really positive, particularly for people like me who are starting out in the city. It's been quite expensive, and so what I would say is, I hope as a group that instead of going through every issue, that we can sort of say as a group that we're in support generally of these ideas, and then start to think about some of the questions that we have, and starting to write out and expand and ask these questions. But I personally am in support, and I don't want my personal representation to be that it's negative. I'm very much in support of it.
I don't think my guess is at the end of this exercise, see what it's not. There are few categories that have legitimate questions. And even as those categories, we just talked about, we are in favor of the general principle of adding housing on vacant land.
And I think we should state that as an opening statement. We are in favor of
With 10 different categories.
Yeah.
Klari.
I think that this, we can just say, not, I think the last time we had pretty much, and I got convinced over the course of the meeting, because that was quite a step forward. I think we can just say that as a concept, we support the idea of flexibility in apartment size and then price and not general plan. I think we were reasonably unanimous on this one as smaller share housing is something well for exploring again the details that matter.
Okay. Do you want to move on to
Creating the housing requires sites, relatively few sites on the other side. Sites that I'm aware of that are currently available are 5- and 6-story buildings, 7-story buildings, and previously were by one way or another the history were affordable. So, for example, we have a group on Amsterdam that we're talking about, another group on 96, Broadway that's coming down. And so at the same time that we have to know what our sites are, we also figure out where we can preserve our affordable housing. Because quite honestly, almost nobody is going to build a 3-bedroom apartment or even a 2-bedroom apartment that doesn't have $5K plus price tag on it. Even with that lot of subsidy, when you look at what the AMI is on those higher bands, when you have families that fill those apartments. So you're not going to replace those apartments. So we actually find a way also to preserve those apartments. And some of them can be done and some of it can't be. We had a way before, which was an off-site inclusionary for preservation of housing. I don't think that survived, but maybe that goes back in there.
Yeah.
And you're
Hold
right.
that till we get to that.
But
I didn't say.
the example for that is on between 8th Street and 87th Street on the west side of the street. Exactly. Walk by there and you will see developers drooling. The problem is they can't form the packages they need in the sequence they require for construction. Because I go over there and I say, hey buddy, where are we? And they think I'm in fits, she's crazy. But I find out that the projects are locked right now because going up, people have flipped them. So the original guy who had the great idea, it's gone. And I'm sure that's not the only strip because they want inclusive, large development packages. Yes.
That's just interesting. We appreciate the fourth and the border was the same.
When we get to the affordable housing part, we'll discuss that for but let's try to get to the top. Number 4.
It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer whether it's reason or not. It's another. That's a question for individual buildings, and that's a question of construction costs.
But it's not a question for us. It's just that we're just in favor of it.
The only flag I can't remember is to check if it's 1990 or if it's a rolling.
1990.
I think so. I think one thing we could suggest is that it's a rolling date. And the reason I suggest that is I work in historic preservation. There's a tax credit that said any building before 1936 would get a tax credit. That's from, this was passed in 1986, so it was 50 years. That was never updated. And the tax credit basically became useless over time because it was too long. So one suggestion here that I would have is that we could say, like, we approve it, but we would switch it to be a rolling 46 years or whatever it is, so that next year it's 1991, next year it's 1992, so that in 2087, our, you know, grandkids aren't having the same discussion.
In a way that.
That's a good idea.
In a way that fits in with the answer we got, people when we asked, what's the significance of changing from the old 1964, whatever it was, to 1990, and their answer was, I think they did it first, was that buildings, it's clearly an arbitrary date in some way, but the buildings after 1990 still had some sort of value, that had physical value, probably that's maybe appreciation going on, tax issues, so that they still had viability, whereas buildings before 1990 had a lot less, but it still was a very arbitrary date, and I think you're quite right, that as the years go by, you don't want to lock in a particular trigger point.
All right, let's find it. No one has any further. Come up with now a somewhat maybe controversial the R11, R12, which significantly increases the maximum that they are.
But we get to look at that, so
Yes,
that's what health conflicts.
yeah, but I think we need to say a little more than that.
I think it's actually really positive because it would, if anyone did this, it would force MIH. So right now, the lot is zoned R10, like they could do, you know, if the city of Jess passes, like presumably they could do UAP, right? But I think more likely there might be sites where people go for this rezoning, and then because it's rezoning, it forces mandatory inclusionary housing, which means that we get affordable units. And the other thing I would say is we're very lucky on the Upper West Side. We have dozens of buildings that are over 12 FAR, and some of them are really quite good. You know, like the Colorado, San Remo, like these are like some of the best buildings we have. So I think because this is just saying, let's create it, and down the road, maybe we'll figure out where to put it. I'm in support of this because it's not saying we're going to do it here or we're not going to do it here. It's kind of saying like, let's create it. We know that there are buildings that have been above it before. We know that if new buildings go up that are like it, they'll have to have affordable housing. So to me, it kind of just creates a new tool in the toolbox that would be, I think, potentially positive. And I don't really see a downside.
I have two things that comment about that. Number one, courts will not address an issue that doesn't exist. It's not a contract. And if somebody wants to build a 15, 18 FAR building in the future, we can revisit.
They can't though.
Why not?
Because they need there to be that zoning.
But they're not going to be sure they'll qualify for it anyway.
Sure, but I guess what I'm saying here is that if it doesn't exist, no one can try to use it. And the other thing I would say is I think there's spots on, like in Manhattan especially, where R11A, which is, you know, one of them, would be unbelievably valuable, like height limited, like contextual street wall, and forcing those sites to have affordable housing through MIH, I think would be really, really important, because unfortunately we've seen a lot of cases where people just take the as of right zoning because there is no point in doing the ULURP because you wouldn't get anything, and then we lose out.
What I wrote really point earlier because that we're eliminating the city, yes, any oversight for housing. It's gone. I feel I'm sort of uneasy about this. I don't know how we could deal with that.
I mean, it hasn't been used widely, it's
right.
But I mean, one of the things that's happening now is after the change in the rent regulation in 2019, is there's no exit path out of those buildings.
No,
Exit path out of, the right civilization. Right, so now what you do is you find a way to get some money into those buildings, particularly if it's a non-farm, and you can turn it into affordable housing and commit to the market, when the market where people move out, it becomes affordable. Somehow, I'm not gonna say I know exactly how to do this, but construction, the tax credits, tax abatements, and all that kind of stuff, and create stuff that you don't have to spend 5 years of planning.
well, do we want to take a position on whether they should be also? And it's
I'm just saying, preservation of existing building. It preserves an existing building. I'm not saying
not build a new.
don't build a new one. But if you can permanently preserve an existing building. Shelley's still here, not going to next meeting. Shelley takes buildings and permanently preserves. It's not meant to just be for Shelley, but there are flat reverse and takes existing buildings and permanently preserves.
The only trip, and I'm doing 2 6-story buildings on Madison Avenue right now. They have, because of the pandemic, they must have flipped at least on one building. Yes, maybe 8 or 9 times, because it just went up. And it's going to be very difficult, because I think a lot of the developers, and we have one good one, and I'm working under another architect on the bad guy. It's like, oh, yeah, I know. And so it is very, what do you call it? Mapping out there, because people flip and change at the drop of a pen, and it all of a sudden goes up as a very expensive piece of real estate to somebody else.
For example, buildings, a lot of them have the valley buildings process.
Correct.
And those are the buildings I'm trying to.
Okay.
Those are the buildings I'm trying to preserve.
Well, I didn't, on this point, and I'm even on actually, I didn't even understand that the import was for the point that you're pointing.
Almost aesthetic. You don't have a site. We're seeing that when we're a campus now. If you don't have a site, you don't have a drawing, you don't have a diagram, you don't have anything, and you're creating a very significant increase. But I'm prepared to go beyond.
Not that I get that. Okay, so what your point is, I don't get the connection between one. I think one IRA and the case in preserving existing buildings and creating lots of affordable housing. But let me just do my other. And that is, I am very skeptical. We are so densely built already in the Upper West Side and the city. I think it says inviting Long Island City to what's left of any buildable things in the Upper West Side. I would not be generous and favorable with the concept, even though no such chosen. It didn't ever happen. I think I have a more negative reaction.
But my final point is that, and I don't know that what I'm probably what they are is up to 50 would they be eligible, for example, for subway phones or any of the other.
I think the bonus is sorry. What bonus is the cap is this?
The cap is
it's like I think it's something like what right now, for example, you get a 10 in some areas. It has a 10 and then you get up to 2 bonus. And I know that's what's
just to take the there are 11.
I think it's similar. Remember,
someone get a bonus about FAO.
I know buildings that were built within my lifetime, probably 2/3 of the table, but that have FARs that are absolutely absurd and can't figure out how they were done. Right? I'm talking about buildings in Midtown at 15, 18.
Well, 15 is legal, so.
Sorry?
For office, you could go as high as you
No, I'm talking about buildings and residential. Some are a little up on each other.
Oh, it's mostly zoning law.
I know it's, yeah, but I'm saying it's. It's actually legal, I'm not mentioning a building or other buildings located, and I did do. In the early '80s, it did do some outreach to Sony of Midtown.
Yeah.
And that may have been what got canceled out by that. But the thing that I don't understand, and I'm not going to belabor the point, is that both of them, they are 12 barrier residential homes. And there were ways of doing it. But the thing I just want to mention is that these high FARs are tall buildings, but tall buildings are inherently much more expensive to build. And so I'm going to fight the devil's advocate. I'm not so sure we're going to see that many of them built because they don't make a lot of economic sense. They don't have the burden of affordable housing on them. They probably make less economic sense. And if you get an economic downturn, I mean, there are some of these guys who built 57th Street buildings who carry an inventory years and years later.
What, can we see if there's a consensus, first of all, on the general concept of adding the
doesn't bother me, but I don't
Excuse
know
me.
that.
Excuse me, Richard, it's very hard for the folks online to understand you. Could you perhaps speak more clearly or slowly?
Could everybody speak more loudly and clearly? What we're hearing is a lot of shaky and it's very indistinct, and we just are having a hard time following.
Please cut in if you have that problem.
Same for me. It's very garbled sounding.
All right. Is this better? By the way, I had a short throat, so that may be your hearing.
Oh.
So we in general in favor of creating these categories.
Yeah.
What about
subject to that?
I don't know.
It would also help if only one person spoke at a time, because when two people are speaking, we hear nothing.
So now you're asking too much. And now what about the idea of offsite? Do we want to weigh in on that? Or do we just not? Yeah.
Just to make sure I understand the definition, is offsite, are you saying that a developer, for instance, would build housing and then they would place the affordable part off into another yard?
That's not what I'm advocating.
Because I feel like
I'm advocating existing buildings only.
Well, yeah, offsite ordinarily under
what I said is my understanding.
under inclusionary housing.
Thank you.
The developer has the opportunity to develop either new units or preserving offsite. This, under this city of yes, there's no opportunity for any developer to do that. And the question is, we want to say something about that one way or another. I hear Iris view is kind of like split the baby, allow it offsite, but only preservation. That's, makes some sense. But how do you feel about that?
In my experience, if we let them do off-site, either it's not going to be built in our neighborhood, and I think that
It's not gonna be well.
if you allow for off-site, there's a potential that they'll build a very expensive housing in our neighborhood and then push people who need affordable housing.
It's gotta be in the district or within a half mile.
But it's not, doesn't create a new building, preserves existing building.
That's your thing, but the question is, in general, what is offsite?
Oh, offsite is meant something very different.
Right.
I mean, I know one project where there's a huge building here that's this small, that's offsite, and then 300 or 400 feet away, there's the market rate building, which is basically this building, but turned on its side and then stretched.
Isn't that something else?
Solution.
Like that, what?
Isn't how we had, water line project?
We did a lot of it. We had a few. Yeah. And they if given the choice, developers will opt for offsite, but obviously.
My answer to your question would be no. I think based on the experience we've had for the last 20 years, what it's given us is bigger, expensive, nobody can afford, those people apply, who don't even learn something because they live in. And maybe they're affording to us. So I don't see any real benefit to us, to build in any incentives for offsite.
Let me give you the
Ours not built. You cannot build to get.
No, but I
You only
that's
preserve.
that's but that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
look, here is the, I mean, it's. If the developer has to develop certain, you know, I think it should be not square feet, not units, but some other measure. He's gonna be, for the same money, he's gonna be able to develop twice as many units somewhere else other than 66 Form 7.
Right, something wrong with that.
Well, that's the argument.
I think that what developers could earn, what kind of community you want to live in, and you want to send poor people up to terrible neighborhoods so that you can build higher this neighborhood. I don't think that's what.
Well, I don't know if it's fair to call other neighborhoods terrible, but to the extent that twice as many people get affordable housing, that's a benefit. There would be X number of people who are going to get homes who otherwise wouldn't get homes under that service, under that scenario.
Better planning and a better distribution to integrate people better.
Factually not what Richard's saying. He's saying if there was something like a dollar value, the fact that you build more cheaply, and she said data, you kind of only have to decide, well, you could build a multiple the amount of units.
Conscious of the time and conscious that this is not something that is really in City of Yes, I would recommend that we
in my mission.
In my view, and it sounds like others have said that, like, there are moral, you know, we are not segregationists, right? I think that's, I hope not. I understand that in my omission, I suppose, but I would say that, like, given the time, given like the actual things that we're dealing with.
I agree.
I think it should be one of
I come to the same conclusion. We're never gonna be able to reach consensus. So, go ahead. Seema, no.
Sorry.
Huh? It's a very pretty. All right. Okay. Expanding the area of the transfer of air rights.
Everybody's seen my 2 cents on it.
Well, we got a very informative.
Yeah, and then I further enhanced it, saying we really need to improve what's in there, particularly when you're talking about our 10 districts where all the sites are built already. Going a lot more doesn't help.
Doesn't help.
It doesn't help the churches and
and
the like.
I don't know. I sent this. I don't know. We got it. Okay.
A lot of us
Yeah.
got it.
Okay. I think the answer then is for us to say, like, obviously, I think supportive of it, especially for like the transformative effect it'll have in other neighborhoods. In our neighborhood, maybe it'll help like the site or two, but overall, I think we could say, like,
if we had that, we wouldn't be arguing about West.
probably something would have been figured out.
So that's the
yeah. So I would say for this one, like, in that we should be supportive of it. I think, like, unfortunately, I don't see a world in which, like, we're going to be able to get it to be any bigger than it is. But I think the fact that, like, our district would benefit relatively insulated from the impacts.
So here's how you do it. You make a bigger district when you're in R, let's say R8 to 10. Smaller transfer when you're in R1 to 5. And that's just an enhancement that reflects the reality of facts on the ground. And if you do something that one standard can't apply citywide. Right.
Yeah, I think Iris' point is interesting. First of all, I'm sorry, but I don't remember your
Adam.
Adam, yeah, I read carefully your thing, although by the way, I tend to discount anything that isn't identified by author and date and.
I just sent
About
it.
that, so, but anyway.
I was on vacation last week. It's the last thing I did before I left.
That having been said, I did find it useful. I think it was the actual thing that I can probably flexible like the chapter. I tried over the weekend to have a talk. I didn't communicate briefly with them. We were not able to talk on the phone with a colleague, colleague, Kate Carpin, who is the pastor of St. Michael and St. Andrew, Andrew and St. Paul.
That is first.
Right. We're gonna meet again soon. About, because that's the one of the two sites you mentioned that actually has not sold their rights and might be able to benefit from, but probably not from this. But so I volunteered to work on this issue with whoever was doing it. I didn't work with anybody, so anyway, and I just didn't know all I would say. I'm very, very skeptical about this. But I actually, what I read had something very good to say a moment ago, which is the geographic heritage is one might transfer, might well be subdivided by what part of the city it's in, or what, the density of what's there. While on the other hand, the usefulness of this definition, or almost any definition of transferability in our own district, is almost non-existent because we are so fully built almost everywhere within our district. I would go very soft.
And the other side of this coin is that even if there is a site for a lot of these buildings, it's still within a district. So I actually would like to encourage them to transfer these development rights outside of a district and give them the opportunity to transfer outside of the district, even if you limited the distance.
I will flag on that point. Again, this is what I do for a living. There's like some affirmatively furthering fair housing implications of allowing something like that to happen. As many of you know, the historic districts on the Upper West Side actually have fewer apartments today than they did a decade ago. So I think for individual landmarks, what it's laid out here, great. I would be worried about broadly trying to allow historic districts to continue to transfer out floor area, because ultimately there needs to be some mechanism to have apartments. Right now we are, but I'm saying I would be hesitant to try that.
No, I'm not saying just trying to district rights, just saying designated landmarks. We were actually trying to find funding for actual preservation of.
Isn't it also the case that this is not an affordable housing, that in this particular provision doesn't.
Yes.
Doesn't transfer your air rights, however it's defined, but there's no, you don't have real affordable housing. Correct. So this has really nothing to do with city of yes affordable housing. And for that reason, I think I'm more leery of it as well. The overall issue or thing for good housing of city of yes with the rest of it is irrelevant.
I agree with you. I think there are two things that kind of make me still feel very comfortable about this. The first is, unfortunately, due to coming back to the Supreme Court, I don't think you legally could put a affordable housing mandate on it, because the transfer development rights are legally what allow landmarking in the first place. But setting that aside, most
Did we lose the office? Can others hear?
Can you not hear us? Okay. The other thing I was going to say is there, and the Fed actually had a great event on this that's reported 2-3 weeks ago. Most of the sites that are going to use this are religious organizations, and when they use it, historically, they almost always partner with developers, and the developers almost always use city subsidies or state or federal subsidies to develop these projects. So it's actually very rare that when you have like a most of the time when religious organizations do this, they try to partner with developers and do.
Look at exactly the opposite.
Yes, on the upper left side, sure, but most of where this is gonna play out is gonna be in the lower density districts where you're more likely to see that kind of.
Yeah, I think we're so nitpicky.
Yeah, we can go.
I think we, to answer your question, right? Not everything is either geared to affordable housing. Right? The theory is more housing built, the more affordable other housing could be. Whether that's true or not. Yeah.
Well, the NYU Permanent Center has done research on it. The NYU Permanent Center has been doing research on it, which is very interesting about how we build more housing overall, the affordability comes up, across the neighborhood and city. So I think we shouldn't be skeptical going into it.
The same is hardly true in the last 20 years in our district. We have tons of luxury housing and it was affordable.
We have fewer units in our district.
Yeah.
We're on the preservation committee and they combined a eight family apartment to a luxury. That's what's happening on the Upper West Side. So I think thinking about how we can build more housing. I worked on a project in Harlem, which you're saying is maybe where this is more relevant, but we work with faith-based organizations to build housing by transferring their heritage to build housing for the community. So I can see how it can be used negatively, but I also think again, if we go in sort of being open and then using processes like you were for community engagement to maybe tame them, I think that's maybe a way to keep moving forward.
Also to say housing went up, everything went up. It's a question of whether housing might have gone up even more if we lost more housing if we didn't build. By building, yes, housing may go up, maybe not as much as if we didn't build. It's a line demand. Can't get around away.
Not very persuasive in our district.
Okay, well, let's to make it square, we had a subcommittee on that.
But we're gonna touch that in this, the evening's only so long.
It's only 20.
So everybody get ready for 10 o'clock.
We have a thing and a drop dead.
Right, so let's
7 after we get them again.
So let's walk around Lincoln Square.
Gonna walk around.
No, I didn't even walk. We avoid that one for the evening.
Not huge.
That's why, yeah, that's why I'm saying.
Well, we can, I mean, we can, we want, we can talk about it on the 6th. If everyone's happy.
Well, I want to take one step back, which is just to say, reading through it and thinking about, reading through the text changes and thinking about the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago. And maybe I'm completely oversimplifying here, but to me, the pertinent pieces were that there's still height limits, which I think is one of the key parts of that, right? When we think about the Lincoln Square Special District and we think about the discussions we're having right now, first about the potential extension, now thinking about what this ABC site will look like. I think a big piece of this has always been about height, and height. The DCP has done, I think, a pretty good job of saying okay, we're going to keep the height thing. And I think their point saying let's figure out a way to get the UAP framework in so that if there is new development in the Lincoln Square Special District, there's a way for it to be affordable. We can quibble about the setback pieces and what's better or what's worse. To me, I don't know if we're ever going to get to a point where we really have a huge preference on what set of descriptions you want to describe how the building should set back for the top 4 stories. So I don't know. I think it's really a question of either we're going to say no, don't change it, we don't want UAP, right? And which would mean no affordable housing, or trying in a week to come up with exactly new text, which I don't think we're going to be able to do.
I don't think anybody's at this table is going to argue against affordable housing. This process that this board went through a few years ago, where we had people come in and argue. One day they'd be there and say 35% of AMI is too low. And the next time they come in and say 60% is too low. Same people, by the way. And then the next week they come and go 120 is too low. And every month they came in with a different. Believe me, anybody remember?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it started going crazy. Just I was there. But yeah, we can go through it. But in principle, we want it. And if it doesn't, and one of my problems is a lot of these proposals have not actually been tested against how affordable they are to build, where the money comes from, or anything. So you get them out there, you see what results you get in 5 years. If you don't if you don't get the results you want in 5 years, you throw in a new program. I mean, Melissa's there, she's seen more term sheets from HPD than you see leads in Central Park.
All right,
So let's just get it in there. We agree with the concept.
if anyone wants to talk in further detail, or can we go along, say, if we agree with the concept, we're gonna meet again on the 6th. If anybody has any second thoughts, then.
What's after the?
Yeah.
Sorry, just to,
I'm not sure we're gonna be.
could I, when there's a second, could I jump in and say, just like,
Absolutely.
back to Adam's point, and to the ABC development, saying yes to this provision for Lincoln Square gives us leverage in that negotiation that Gail would need in order to extract something. So I think if we want to be forward looking and ensure that that project, which we believe will proceed in some form, has affordable housing that's not just, you know, her trying to push them as hard as she can without any leverage, we need to say yes to this. And do we want to say, okay, we might have some concerns about setbacks or street walls or whatever, that's one thing, but let's not lose sight of saying yes to this in order to further our goals in the next project. And also just ask before we go into the UAP concept discussion, I met with Ethel and Louisa to talk about that, and we had some shared points, but.
Well, the ABC side is incorporated. This would apply to that. We would have a couple of things. Number one, prevent Gary building off-site affordable housing. That's good or bad, and what Gail or me. But it makes it harder to reach agreement. But that's fine, you know. And it also may mean that it may mean that city planning will not approve the map change to put this in there. But yeah. So I don't think we can weigh in on those issues right now.
I think Melissa was saying that if we said yes to this, it would make it easier for Gail to be more aggressive in discussing the ABC site. If we said yes to this, then she could say to city planning, say like, look, my community gave you what you wanted to do in Lincoln Square, and therefore I am going to get to say more about what we do at ABC. I don't know. Who knows how any of this actually works, right? Like if they're not discussing it on the council chamber floor.
That's where they just
Sound like, you know,
Okay. That doesn't sound like
that doesn't sound like anything Gail would trade off
that what should.
what you just said.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Sorry, I didn't want to complicate the discussion. I was saying if we're gonna change the rules of Lincoln Square, so special districts, so they include UAP, and we're then mapping that site into the Lincoln Square special district, then this rule would theoretically apply there. That, I guess that was my point, that it would come with affordability provisions, so.
It would.
All right. I think we're good.
But look, it still gives us leverage, some leverage before city planning rules on whether or not to incorporate. Because the idea of the area is to come up with some design. It may not conform to Lincoln Square, it may not conform to R10, but it's would come closer to satisfying both parties. So there is some leverage. I agree with you. How do we want to hold
on the whole package?
No, I mean, on the Lincoln Square package. Yeah.
But it's square.
I think what it sounded like was yes, with the option for anyone who has specific comments about something to come back.
Yeah, well, I'll draft it and then you come back and say you drafted it wrong.
Yeah, like, we want it to be 85%, not 80% for the setback.
Okay. Number 8, miscellaneous proposed amendment. I don't have any smoke. Huh?
You know, a lot of these are,
It's like,
I mean, I hate the dormers at the sides of this table. That's a design.
What are you reading from?
I'm reading from the screen here, which I.
Okay.
it's up on the number 8.
Just read it.
Yes. Don't like that.
Well,
You know, and once again, unless we get into the weeds, we're going to establish an system. Street wall heights. Names.
No, we don't know anything.
We have to read 1,300 pages, that's all.
So we have insufficient.
We probably have information, but once again, we needed an illustrator, a book illustration about that.
Okay, so
We understand what all this.
we can certainly say that we agree that there are some obsolete provisions, but until we see drawings, examples of what they're getting at.
I will have to say that some of the street wall provisions are.
They don't want to listen, they want to give.
Are not consistent with mid-rise construction. They're consistent with high-rise construction techniques, low-rise. What if you're in 5-13 story building range? They don't work.
How many 5 and 13 story buildings keep building? So. Yeah.
That's what you're gonna see in Banana Valley.
Okay.
That's what you're gonna see in some of the mid blocks above 87th Street.
Yeah, building, we're adding a lot of floors. So setting it back.
Well, that's different.
I know. So were there the last things that came from George James?
No.
Because when I saw what I thought, but was applying for us.
Oh, now this one I think.
30 feet rear yard. Don't know, but
Yeah, with the 20 feet rear yards. You have to.
it's labeled as not directly.
That is wrong.
And the distance between buildings also.
I mean, I think it's gonna come out strongly against this has, it's worse than you think. This has the potential to allow someone with donut build out an additional 10 feet towards the lot line and create an accessory building to within 5 feet, as long as it's not used as president.
Which, by the way, is the version of back buildings that exists in Greenwich Village and East Village. And
But not here.
we're banned before any of our great grandparents were around. And that goes back to something sorry, talking about water.
No.
But if you start to read through the history of housing, 1860, 1901, 1870 something or other, up to the 1929 multiple dwelling law, those were all meant to address problems that were created by these yard dimensions. The 900 square foot court, almost like an old law tenement. It's our new law tenement, which was basically out from 1901 to
Does anybody disagree we need to come out against this?
Yeah, I have a question about it. I see that in your question, but there's still restrictions on like window and walls, like you can't build windows.
they're changing that too. They're cutting all those dimensions by about 50%.
they're calling them sort of like solariums.
They want to encourage this, so that any impediment to building out.
They're striking all these dimensions that are right in the regulations.
Would make some sense somewhere in Queens.
I guess I would disagree in the fact that like we have large full block sections which have light and air requirements that are like completely way lower than this, that tons of people are perfectly happy living in. So I guess I would push back to say like
They're happy to live in them because that's what's available. If you live on the second floor, 20-story building with a 20-foot yard, I know people are calling me up at the weather reports, like in those buildings.
I mean, I guess my point here is like, I understand what you're saying about like the history of, you know, the old law tenements, right, and the new tenement law act, like all of these things, I get where they come from. Where we are in 2024 in terms of how we light and ventilate buildings is completely different from where we were. Yes,
We still use natural light.
yes. And in New York City, we'll still have a requirement that every bedroom have a window, right? My sister lives in Washington, DC, right? She has she and her, you know, fiance, congrats to her. They have a 2-bedroom, right? And one of them doesn't have a window. And that's the one they sleep in because they don't, like, they want it dark when they sleep. So I guess what I'm saying here is, I don't think it's our job to say that, or for me personally, I think it's disingenuous to be like, okay, this is exactly how much space people have to have when tons of people live today with less space than that. And these, you know, requirements and this talk of, you know, coming back to the donut question, which I feel very strongly about, but for here, I think these small changes to how big your yard needs to be to allow more apartments seems.
I don't have that, given the affordability prices, I think the fact that apartments may not meet your specifications, the fact that people will want them, and again, providing more apartments will put maybe not downward pressure on rents, but maybe stop rents from going out as much as they otherwise would.
An 80-foot building, which is what you're gonna get with 80% lot coverage.
I would not want to live there. You look me over on that.
This proposal has no.
Everyone, sorry to interject, but I absolutely need to interject. 2 quick things. One, it's 6:30. We're gonna need the Zoom back at around 6:45. Maybe I could push it to 6:50. And secondly, I think I've realized maybe what the audio issue is. I think there's been, well, it doesn't matter. I can work it out later. It was mostly more important to give the first announcement. Anyway, carry on with the time you have left. I'll circle back at 6:45.
This proposal may be in some area of the city may result in additional housing. It's not going to result in any additional housing units on the Upper West Side. Everyone who owns a brownstone who wants to build out to the lot line opposed to it is going to occupy it as a single family residence. Not going to increase the number of units by 1. And there is.
Is there even the brownstones that have been divided into apartments?
I don't think.
So then let's add something that just says like, we're fine with this as long as it's for a multiple.
Yeah, fine. I know there is something in this community for years, forever. We have done everything we could possibly do to serve these donuts. Because you know, if one person on a block builds out, every other home facing that yard is affected by it. And I think that the donut, for better or worse, whether it would be built today or not built today, whether housing techniques have changed, like there, the donut is a legacy on the Upper West Side, and I would hate to see it go.
Yeah, just adding a couple of things. I think what Adam was talking about, to make it a big agree this way, you want to live with no that goes, I think, much more to the small housing, no kitchen, share housing, whatever that one's called. But so I've been on our preservation committee most of my early 30 years on MCB7. I was there, co-chair, predecessor of our committee for a long time. And what Richard said is absolutely correct, that preserving feeling the life, the air, the openness, the gardens, the setbacks, and the space in our donuts is just absolutely essential to our built up Upper West Side. The experience we've had with not is whether it's a developer who's planning to sell it to somehow the 8 or 10 and stabilized tenants, some of them were market rate, they're gone, they don't know where they went, but they converted to a single put back into single family house that's had been built in 1990. So In some cases, the applicant is the owner and then use it for their own personal use. And they are pushing against up to the 30-foot setback. They're going, instead of the old partial extension, they're going lot line left to right. They're going up. Every one of these steps is a rooftop addition. And mostly they are approved largely by our committee, not always, and usually by LPC. But that's the family that's built in every current possible dimension that they can build. And then what we would be talking, and I don't know that they're then going to come back and say, oh, we want to add another addition at the back. That's another 10. Some of them. Well, we're talking about more here is the sorts of developers, and I mean that's a dirty word, I'll let somebody is, who are going to, again, their bathroom happens all over the place to get the 6 or 8 stabilized or market rate tenants out, take a building, and then say, oh, yeah, I can make, instead of 5 apartments, maybe I can make 6 apartments. None of those doesn't have any. It just fills in the donut and lets somebody make more money to the detriment of everyone else in the donut. I completely agree with Richard that we should say.
Just for
No, let me interrupt. I promise to be able to speak.
Thank you.
Get out of 6:45, so let's take a break.
Just one quick comment. The new members of the board, we policy and we'll be given a year, we'll see anywhere from 10 to 30 if these come in. 10 and closure, 30. In
And we have to approve any of them except, no, and you do. Up to 30 never, and if it's an N, then we can.
Nobody applied.
All right, I know.
Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm Alex Floyd, president of the Committee for Environmental Sound. And that's my look at everything, how it's going to be, how it's going to affect the environment. And the very first thing I want to remind you is that this is Manhattan. And the density, we were talking about how much happened this year and next year. The important thing to remember in Manhattan is that the person per square mile in Manhattan is 75,000 people. The one that's closest to us is Brooklyn, which is 40,000 people. And the others have much less. We are a very dense borough. We are the densest borough. And there's lots of things that happen because we're so dense. I'm not going to read you my whole thing here, which I prepared and I can hand out. But I also think we should, I have been talking to George James. I know a lot about what he thinks about it. I think some of you don't know what he wants to do. What infill means, we've had a little taste of infill. He took the lawsuit on 200 Amsterdam, and that was a building that was expanded because the developer got away with he had a 10,000 square foot zoning lot. When he finished with it, it was 100 square feet zoning lot. He went around picking up little pieces all over that he wanted. And I want to remind you that in 1960, when we started urban renewal, we started it because we saw them as slums, because we saw that some buildings, the windows were on the walls of the next. And we did some progress. We got NYCHA is really very pretty. It kept up, they did everything. There's a little bit of grass lawns. All windows are outside, they're not on walls. They did it. Well, some of the things they what do you call it? Wiped out streets. The one that I know very well, the Amsterdam houses and that, I think there was no more 67th Street to anything for blocks. They made super blocks and they added to the zoning lot. They gave them that space to do it. What we're doing here now, if you say infill, that extra space that was given is being taken away to put in more housing. NYCHA shouldn't have more housing. Thank God they have a little bit of air. Thank God they can walk and sit on something. Thank God there's a place for a bench for a car. That was a huge improvement. And what you're talking about here is changing all these improvements. By the way, we won the case on 200 Amsterdam.
When they turn building.
Wait a minute. The judge agreed with everything that we said, that they can't do these things. The appellate division reversed. The appellate division reversed. Everybody, but the department of building changed it so that they can never happen again. That's when the Municipal Law Society moved out of they were with us on the lawsuit, but they moved out figuring that they had at least accomplished for NYCHA and for everybody else that had that kind of a building, a lawn and an air and things, they could never do it again. However, after this, it's going back to the old way. You can pick up the square feet, because they have tremendous imaginations about how they can move around and pick up zoning lots and doing that, and that's what we don't like. And what I feel most strongly about affordable housing is that we're losing it. It used to be that they would put in a new stove and a new this and a new that, and they would raise the height, the rent, and then it would become out of the thing and would become no more affordable and so forth. Now what they're doing is that they're putting two apartments together. So there's two affordable apartments, there's two rent-controlled apartments, and they're no more rent-controlled. They now have 3 bedrooms and they're becoming luxury apartments. That's the worst thing that's happening to us as far as affordability in this area. Do I want to say anything? If you can find a little bit of vacant lots in this Manhattan, turn it into a park. Turn it into something where you can sit and breathe and look at the sun. Never mind putting another house on it. And I said, don't lose affordable housing. Do we need more population in Manhattan? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't want to be nasty about other places than the other boroughs, but they're certainly less than where we are. In my own
But not more.
Did you want kids?
well, I'm not going to take luxury houses and make them affordable. I'm sorry, don't go that way.
You would, good.
Do we need, my own feeling is, the affordable housing and the expansion of that should really be in the suburbs. Or what breaks my heart is everything happens in New York. Everything is put into New York. Look at all these nice little cities that we used to have, Poughkeepsie, Binghamton, Whitaker. They've lost population. They've lost everything as we grow. That's insanity. And then from an environmental point of view, what did I say in here? Considering that
You have those things to hand out and all that?
I did.
I think we only have 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
With the only person who needs to speak.
What are you doing? Oh, let me just, and maybe we should continue after. We're gonna
All
have
right,
to take
just
the,
one sentence, this is the environmental. There is a shortage of affordable housing in New York. It must be addressed, but not by degrading the already tenuous quality of life. Daily traffic congestion, limited open space. New York is a coastal city. Very vulnerable to conditions that occur because of global warming. Our sewage systems cannot handle heavy rainstorms. Coyho should be addressing ways to mitigate these problems, that increasing density that will add more traffic to stimulate larger populations and further stress congestion of the space, sewage, and things like that. So that's my message.
Yes.
Judy, maybe I need a question.
Going to change thinking tomorrow night of well and West.
Okay.
Does everybody have that? So that George and
I'm supposed to accept it.
Yeah.
There is one thing I want to call everybody's attention that I haven't been able to track down. But George said to me that there is something somewhere in this proposal that allows a built out building owner, someone who's already got built out to the limit, to apply for an authorization in the city plan for 2 FAR acres. nothing, no criteria, no affordable housing, no nothing. It does go to the community, but there are no criteria for how, you know, what to do. So it's basically what they're saying is, if you have a building, it's already built, if you figure out how to add to FAR, come to us, and we probably let you do it.
Well, our final paragraph points out that this is for a developer.
Yeah.
That's, you can ask George. Well, we actually.
So anyhow, look, here's what we'll do. I'll circulate.
Excuse me, Richard, you're just about to lose all your Zoom participants. Maybe you
right.
could sum up a little bit where we are in 1 minute?
Yeah,
That's what he's doing.
I'm gonna circulate a draft. And hopefully figure out what the consensus or majority of the committee feels on each of these topics. We're probably not going to be able to vote as a committee before the full board meeting. But we will be able to vote on the 6th, and then we have a full board meeting on the 18th.
Yes.
Beverly, is that
No.
no?
We will, yes, we're turning steering into a full board business only session. But I do think you could also consider having a meeting at 5:30, 6 o'clock on the night of the full board in early June. If you were ready with a resolution to vote on then, and that would be
Well,
then
let's see,
able to be
let's see the
considered.
feedback. Let's see what feedback I get. And if we have a consensus, we do that.
Can I just urge that there were a number of items where we simply did not have information, that you get questions off to city planning ASAP this week. So there's a shot at getting answers back that may inform your final resolution. Max can handle those. You just have to get him the questions.
He's been doing that over the last couple of days. I've been feeding Shelley. So, and they sometimes answer the question.
They've only got 59 other communities.
Exactly. Well, but these individuals, I think, don't have 59. They have.
Yeah, but what's her name was ours?
No, I know, I'm just saying broadly.
You're right.
They do not have the staff to answer everything.
But they're the ones pushing this. They establish.
Sorry.
I need to check on the Zoom.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. And I'll try to get something out certainly before the weekend.
Great.
And you know, I have to tell you, Beverly, the new board members who are not yet on our committee have a very impressive in terms of their background and their technical skill. So that's been very helpful. And I want to thank all of the patients.
You may end up with a couple of them. We'll see.
Nice, Richard.
Just thought we had a time.
That you get, but you know that on Zoom, haven't had the opportunity to have questions. So
They've had that. They had
weeks ago.
not today or the last.
No, 2 weeks ago they did.
Several times, and no one answered.
You with Olive or?
This is the first time I've spoken.
Yeah,